Oh, Jesus. Oh, this is it. This is the end of it all. We left before dawn, just like we planned. Jim, Alex, and me, creeping out with whatever we could carry in rucksacks. We set off into the trees at an angle, so we could cut through the forest and meet up with the road further down. That way, if the others looked for us, they wouldn't catch us just strolling down the driveway. It was hard going, harder than we expected. The roots and grass clumps seemed to be trying to grab our feet, to trip us up with every step. Branches grabbed at our hair and faces, or else snatched at any exposed skin, cutting us, like the forest itself was trying to keep us from leaving. The men wouldn't admit this, of course. They just kept slogging on, forcing their way onwards, their hope driving them to reach the road. And as it turned out, they were right and I was wrong. Alex reached it first, stumbling through the last layer of grasping branches to topple face first down a banking onto the gravel. Jim climbed down more gracefully, then held out a hand to help me follow. As soon as we reached the road, the boys seemed a lot happier, practically skipping along. They thought they were safe. Whatever they thought was going on, and I don't think either of them ever admitted it was something otherworldly, not out loud anyway. Surely it was over now. They were on a road, a man-made thing. They were clearing away, never mind that we were still surrounded on all sides by miles and miles of wilderness. The road was a thin strip of oasis, a lighthouse of humanity. We were safe. We found Curtis's truck about an hour later, sitting abandoned in the middle of the road. The windscreen was shattered, giving the safety glass a smoky look. The nose was crumpled in almost to the point of hitting the engine, and there was blood splashed across it. They must have hit something, Alex said uneasily. Something pretty fucking big, Jim agreed. Both doors had been left hanging open. One dangled at an angle, like a broken wing, where it had been half ripped off. There was no one in sight, and although two sets of scuffed footprints led away from the truck, they weren't following the road onwards. Rather, they were heading back into the trees. Alex headed off after the footprints without another word. Jim went to inspect the truck, so I followed him. There was blood splashed across the inside of the cab, too. Across the dashboard, the steering wheel, the seats, the windows. Blood. Lots of it. The passenger side window had been kicked out from the inside. The driver's side was starred and coated with the thickest layer of blood. You could almost hear the echo of their screams in the air. Then Alex started shrieking. Jim ran towards him, and even though he told me to stay where I was, I followed him. I couldn't let Jim out of my sight. I couldn't risk it. We ran, but as we did, something washed over us. Something louder and more immediate than Alex's horrific screaming. The whistle, the tinnitus. There it was again, dropping us to our knees. This time, though, I didn't end up drifting alone. This time I could feel Jim's hand in mine. When the whistle left us, Jim pulled me to my feet and we kept going like nothing had happened. Alex had stopped screaming. We pushed through into a small clearing, only to find Alex in the jaws of a cougar. It dropped him and retreated when Jim ran forward, swinging a branch and bellowing a challenge. The cat pulled up at the edge of the trees and turned to bare its teeth at Jim. Then it turned to me, and our eyes met across the distance. It blinked slowly, then turned and loped off into the tree shadow. Jim had gone straight to Alex, though it was obvious it was hopeless. The cat had bitten clean through his spinal cord, right at the base of his skull. He wasn't the only one there either. Jim noticed first and tried to keep me from seeing, but it was about what I'd expected anyway. Kit was there too, sprawled out on the ground. The cougar had been at him too, maybe even more than one. There didn't seem to be a lot left. "She's not here," Jim said after a while, sounding sick. "Rice isn't here. Her footprints led in here, but then they just stop. He was right about that. There was no sign of her, though I bet I could guess what she'd look like if I ever saw her again. Jim practically carried me back to the road. We both felt like there was something wrong, but it took a while to realize just what it was. We'd lost time again. It was far later than it should have been. I think that was the point when Jim really started to panic. He told me to shut myself in the truck cab while he ran the rest of the way alone. Then he would have someone come back to get me. He seemed to think it was a great idea under the circumstances. I thought it was about as awful a plan as plans can get. I begged him to stay with me, literally begged him, and I think he thought I was scared for myself. He just didn't understand. He didn't understand at all. I did. I knew if I let him go, I'd never see him again, not as we were then. And so I begged him to stay with me, but he didn't. I didn't see any point in waiting around, or in spending a night in a drafty truck. I made my way home instead, and I wasn't exactly surprised to find that the way back was easier. The cabin was empty when I got there, completely deserted. I wasn't particularly surprised to find that either. I'm still writing this because I want someone to know what's happened to us. I'm inside now, with all the doors locked, all the windows shuttered. Jim won't be coming back, I know it. And if the others do, I don't know what I'll do. Jesus, I don't know what to do. I'm all alone, but I can hear things moving around outside. I'm so fucking scared, but probably not for the reasons you'd think. I'm not scared of what's out there getting in. I'm scared that eventually I'll want to open the door. God help me. God help me.